We know, for example, that 20% of our kids are experiencing significant mental health problems that warrant social services. That's a lot of kids that are already struggling. We know that 1 out of 6 kids in Canada live in poverty. We know that 7% of students in grades 7 to 12 reported attempting suicide at least once in the past 12 months, and another portion actually considered the possibility. We know that 6 to 12% of kids tell us that they don't feel safe at school, a place that they're mandated by law to attend. And we know that 8 to 10% of kids on average tell us that they're bullied and harassed by peers on a regular basis. That's every week, every day, many times a day. But a meta-analysis was done of over 200 studies of kids in grades K to 12 on the impact of social emotional learning programs. And what they found was that if you had a caring learning environment and direct instruction in social emotional skills, not only did you improve kids' attitudes and their social emotional competencies, but in fact, you also showed gains in their behavior, less conduct problems, more pro-social behavior, less emotional distress, and importantly, 11 percentile point gain in academic achievement.
5 fois par jour, 25 fois dans une semaine, 100 fois dans un mois et près de 1000 fois dans une année scolaire où l'élève met les pieds dans sa cour d'école. Si ce sont 1000 moments où ça va bien, où l'élève a du plaisir, où il joue bien, où il arrive à régler ses conflits, tout est parfait dans le meilleur des mondes. Mais s'il s'agit de 1000 moments où il est intimidé, bousculé, rejeté par ses pairs, il y a fort à parier que ça a une très grande incidence sur sa capacité de concentration en classe, sur ses apprentissages, sur sa réussite éducative.
The sad part for our bullies are that when they want to be noticed by the people who care for them the most, but because they've now desensitized themselves, the slights of people that don't mean anything to them are the ones that are going to get them. And it's so hard because sometimes when you've entered into a relationship with a child who's in this bully dynamic, you know, and you'll say, well, what happened? Well, she was looking at me funny, and he was doing it, but who is she? You don't even know who she is. It doesn't matter. But the fact is that they are so sensitive to slight, but they can't say, well, no, it's not that girl who looked at me funny. It was that my dad didn't come on the weekend to take care of me. My dad didn't show up. They feel slighted by their father, but they can't talk about that because that makes them feel too vulnerable, and so they will notice the slights everywhere else. So these kids are basically walking time bombs. The bully's in the corridor, they're wanting to have a couple of more people in their group, they're standing beside you, and now somebody's walking by, maybe you're walking by with your glasses on. Now the bully isn't going to say to the kid beside, hey, come on, join me in teasing this kid. The bully's going to start the teasing. Oh, look at your glasses, they're really ugly. And now the bully's waiting to see, what are you going to do? Trouble is, of course, if you're standing there, you're in a real bind now too. Because you don't know whether you know that this person, most kids, by the way, know exactly who these kids are. They know exactly who they are. And they're scared. And so now you've got a choice. If you don't laugh with the bully, what could happen to you? You could become the next victim. If you're a brand new kid to the school, or if you're a very vulnerable kid and you know that this bully is a strong person and now they're starting to recruit you, you're going to be right in there with them. And so now the bully's going to look for you and look for the other person and laugh at the glasses again and laugh at the glasses, and all of a sudden laughing at that person with the glasses becomes a way of recruiting. Okay? And it's very difficult because if any of you have ever been recruited by a bully, it's the most frightening thing in the world. Because right now most of our kids know that if I join in, I'm part of the problem, but if I pull out, I could become the next victim. It's a very scary place to be.
First, you teach kids that there's always another way to solve the problem. There's always multiple options before you start getting into the consequences. So several lessons are devoted usually to what else could you do, what else could you do, what else could you do, to get the idea that you can think of other ways to do it. Then you start evaluating the consequences. Well, what happens if you do X? What happens if you do Y? And eventually you get to kids actually understanding how to think through what to do in a problem situation. A lot of them use a stoplight poster to remind kids of the process. First thing you need to do is stop and calm down and think about it before you act. They have exercises of, calming kids down. What is really the problem? What is it that you want to happen? Think of lots of solutions, think of the consequences, and then try the problem.
La philo, c'est quoi? Qu'est-ce que ça donne? Qu'est-ce que ça apporte? Bien, c'est un exercice démocratique. C'est un exercice de tolérance, d'acceptation de l'autre, mais au-delà de l'autre, de ses idées aussi. C'est un exercice d'apprentissage de la liberté d'expression et de pensée. C'est un exercice qui va nécessairement influencer de façon constructive, positive, les relations entre les élèves, mais les relations entre l'adulte et les élèves aussi. Puis ça, de nombreux enseignants me l'ont dit, qui sont là avec moi, qui assistent à ma discussion philosophique avec leurs élèves. Ils apprennent à découvrir leurs élèves d'une autre façon. C'est des questions qu'on ne se pose pas souvent. Moi, j'arrive et on aborde des sujets qui sortent un peu de l'ordinaire. Les élèves vont nécessairement être dans une posture aussi différente. Ils vont répondre leurs opinions, ce qui n'est pas nécessairement toujours le cas en classe. Donc, pour la relation élève-adulte, il y a un gain là qui est aussi très bénéfique. Il ne faut pas oublier non plus que la philo va transcender les murs de la classe. On la fait ensemble, on l'expérimente, mais ses impacts vont se retrouver dans la cour d'école, dans le corridor, dans tous les lieux de l'école, mais aussi dans la vie en général. Donc, on la fait ensemble, mais ce n'est pas seulement pour la classe, il y a des gains dans tout le milieu scolaire. Puis là, je me permets de soulever la question, est-ce que nos politiciens dialoguent et écoutent? Est-ce que nos patrons nous écoutent et dialoguent avec nous? Est-ce que nous, dans nos rencontres d'équipe, est-ce que vraiment on écoute et on dialogue? Donc, est-ce que nous, avec les élèves, est-ce qu'on écoute et on dialogue? Tout ça, ça s'apprend, puis la philo permet de le faire, je pense.
Basically, our children need to be in right relationships. They need to be in relationships where the adults are in charge, the adults are willing to take care of them. If you suspect that a child might fit that profile, go and adopt them. Somebody in the school's eyes have to light up when that child comes into the school. And hopefully when that child's world is falling apart, they will have an adult that they can turn to. And then we need to truly try and soften the hearts of these kids. We need to ideally, within the context of our schools and the context of our homes, help these children grieve what they could not change in their life. We need to be welcoming of tears. We don't need to be afraid of tears or think that tears are something that we need to get to take care of and, oh no, it's okay, honey, don't cry, because even that can stop tears. We all need a chance to grieve. When we grieve, we soften. When we soften, we grow. And that is, in effect, the message of my talk today.
Relationships affect all aspects of children's development, and we can't forget that. So what's developing under the skin? Well, it turns out the brains and the genes are interacting constantly with what's happening. And the mechanism in the gene is really interesting. And Michael Meany's work here at McGill is revealing much of this. He works with rats, of course, because you can't do this research with children, thank heavens. But they take rats at birth who have a gene for high aggression, and they cross-foster those rats and put them with mothers who are highly nurturant, caring. And for a rat, that means you lick and groom your infant. And what happens is a whole set of proteins come and surround the aggressive gene, methylated, it's called, surround the aggressive gene, and that gene doesn't express itself. And not only does that gene not express itself, but if that rat pup is female, she will go on to have her children who have that same gene, but the gene again is wrapped, and so it's down-regulated. It doesn't express itself. What's so interesting is if you put that rat, and I get qualifications, I was at a conference with all these researchers yesterday, if you put that rat back into an environment with highly aggressive rats, what happens? The gene adapts. It demethylates. That protein sheath comes off, and the rat becomes aggressive again. Why? Because you need to be aggressive to survive. So that's how finely attuned our genes are. They're changing in response to the quality of relationships. And there's no reason to think that this doesn't happen in humans. There's research out of New Zealand that followed children for 35 years. And there's a gene or a form of a gene that relates to antisocial behavior. And if those youth who have it and grow up and are maltreated, they're pretty much on a crash course to antisocial behavior. If they grow up in a caring and nurturant home, that's much, much less likely to express itself. So do relationships matter? They matter down to the very cells in our body.